If you're planning a trip to Laos, then whatever you do, don't. Hi, I'm Joe Bauer, a food and travel writer based in Berlin. If you like immersive food and travel videos and tips, then subscribe and leave a comment below with your thoughts on where I should head to next. Laos is the rare place that burrows its way into your skin so swiftly and profoundly that it pains you to leave. So if you're fortunate enough to be planning a trip to Laos, then take me with you! Sorry about that. Just kidding. Kind of. Let's try that again. If you're fortunate enough to be traveling to Laos, then follow along for these 5 don'ts to make sure your trip is nothing but smooth sailing. And make sure to stick around for the last one because it has to do with Kuang Si Falls, which is one of the most popular places to visit in all of Laos. First up, don't honk. Traveling in Vietnam, you get used to constantly hearing beeps from the motorbikes and the cars. And unlike in the US and maybe other parts of the world, it's not an extension of someone's murderous rage when they honk. It's just a little beep beep to let you know they're there. And so then when I was driving a motorbike in Ninh Binh, Vietnam, make sure you watch that video, I followed suit. I was beeping, letting people know where I was. If I saw somebody getting ready to turn, I beeped. Not so in Laos. One morning we rented a motorbike to take that out to Kuang Si Falls, and I noticed pretty early on that nobody was beeping. And then I flashback. I thought back to the day before and realized we never noticed anybody beeping. I mean, it's not to say it was completely beep-free zone, but for the most part, no beeps. Bupkis on the beeps. So that's my first tip. Don't honk when you're driving the motorbike in Laos. Unless you absolutely need to. You don't have to be going silently into your demise. Number 2, don't expect to catch a last-minute train. A lot of people are really excited about the relatively new high-speed train that goes from southern China through Laos into the capital, Vientiane, pretty close to the Thai border. I was one of those people who was very excited, and so I started looking up early on, how do you buy a ticket? And, I presumed that you could do so online. You can in neighboring Vietnam. You could just buy a train ticket online, and that's precisely what we did when we rode the train in Vietnam. Not so in Laos. There was an app that they tried to release earlier in the year, but I guess it's had a lot of bugs, and people are still forced to have to go into the train station and actually book tickets in person. The problem with this is that tickets book up very quickly, and my understanding is that train tickets don't become available for a train until 3 days prior to that departure. And so if you're already in Southeast Asia or Laos itself, traveling around, it can be a little stressful to be figuring out, we're leaving in 3 days from now and looking to see what seats are available. Based on our experience taking the train from Luang Prabang to Vang Vieng, it was very crowded. I believe that was a sold-out train. So my recommendation is to find a travel organization on the ground that can buy your train tickets for you, and it's a little ease of mind thing. We use Kiri Travel, who we also did a couple of other activities with that maybe you saw in the Luang Prabang video and the Vang Vieng video. They booked our tickets, made sure that it was at our hotel when we got there, and it was pretty stress-free. I will say, small caveat, when we took the train from Vang Vieng to Vientiane, it was basically the opposite of our journey from Luang Prabang to Vang Vieng. It was very quiet. So I kind of wonder, could we have changed train tickets? Because we ended up maybe leaving a little bit later from Vang Vieng with some flexibility than we would have wanted to. So we did kind of wonder, could we have changed tickets or bought something last minute? And also the train wasn't fully booked. My assumption, based on our experience in Luang Prabang, is that there are a lot of tour groups that are coming to northern Laos, and so they're the ones who are booking up the train tickets, and basically everybody who signed up with the tour group is being funneled to those trains. For reasons I don't know, Vang Vieng is maybe not on that itinerary, because when we took that train from Luang Prabang to Vang Vieng, hardly anybody got off. They kept going to Vientiane. So I believe that train was sold out. Maybe if you're going from Vang Vieng to Vientiane and only doing that journey later in the day, maybe there's some flexibility. But to play it safe, don't expect to buy a last-minute train ticket in Laos. Number 3, staying on the topic of trains, don't take a train to Vientiane if you're coming from Vang Vieng. Now, that maybe sounds a little bit weird, especially coming from me. If you know anything about me, you know I love my trains. But the whole advantage of taking the train is it's a lot faster. And you do notice that from Luang Prabang to Vang Vieng. That's a journey that, through windy mountain roads, that I understand could take 5 to 6 hours. We actually met a couple in Vang Vieng who came from Luang Prabang at the same time we did, and they talked about having a 5 to 6 hour bus ride, whereas our train was, I think, about an hour and a half. So there's definitely a benefit in that. The problem is that the train stations aren't necessarily in the city center. In fact, they aren't in the city center at all. The train station for Luang Prabang is maybe a 15-minute drive outside of the city. The one in Vang Vieng is a little bit closer. The one for Vientiane is a whole 30 minutes outside of the city. So, of course, it's nice to have the high-speed train and save all that time to get there, but then once you get to Vientiane, you're going to have to get a taxi for another 30-minute drive. If you're coming from Luang Prabang and going all the way to Vientiane, not stopping in Vang Vieng, then it makes total sense to stick with the train and then, just deal with the fact that you're going to have to take a taxi for another 30 minutes. But if you are in Vang Vieng, you've spent the night there, and then you're continuing onward to Vientiane, I think it actually might make more sense to take a bus. You're not going through mountains like you are from Luang Prabang to Vang Vieng. So the amount of time it takes to travel by car or bus to Vientiane is more or less the same as it is with the train. Except with the bus, you're gonna just get dropped off in the middle of the city and then you can just walk to your hotel. But with the train, if you are getting off at Vientiane, you're gonna have to get a taxi, which gets to my next point. Number 4, don't take the minivan taxis if you're in a hurry. So something I noticed early on in Laos is that sometimes when you take a taxi, it's a tuk-tuk, like basically the bed of a truck, and they'll have seats on both sides, and it'll be a little bit less expensive if you're traveling with more people. Oftentimes, though, a taxi is basically a minivan, and they're gonna just put as many people in there as possible. And I totally understand that. Another tourist going into their van is the price of another ticket. Everybody pays the same amount in these minivan taxis, whereas for the tuk-tuks, my understanding was that there was one flat rate often, so then you can split that with other travelers. But with the minivan taxis, they charge everybody the same rate, so for the driver, there's a big financial advantage to just shoving in as many people as you want. This was, we could just say, less than enjoyable when we got into the train station at night in Vientiane, and somebody waved us over, said they're a taxi driver, they could take us to the city center, and we got on the bus, and we waited another 20 to 30 minutes before we finally took off and went to Vientiane, which, as I said before, is about a 30-minute drive into the city center. That's why I'm saying if you are stopping in Vang Vieng, it might make sense to skip the train and just get a bus that goes all the way to the city center so you can avoid all the mishigas with the minivan taxi and just show up in the middle of Vientiane. So if you're in a hurry, maybe don't book with the minivan taxis. And for my last one, number 5, don't wait to go to Kuang Si Falls. I understand that everybody who goes to Luang Prabang or northern Laos wants to see Kuang Si Falls. It's spectacular. I mean, you can go watch my other video on Luang Prabang and see all the flowery language I used to describe it, and it's all true. It's a phenomenal sight to see. The thing is, you're probably not the only person in the world who likes to see phenomenal things. The waterfall opens at 8 a.m., we showed up at 10 a.m., and already it was getting pretty busy. And with tourism basically wide open at this point around the world again, there were a lot of people there. And that can lead to some frustrating things like crowded areas, everybody trying to get the same picture of the waterfalls, seeing people smoking and throwing their cigarette butts on the ground even though there are trash cans all over the place. That was the worst. So if you really want to try to avoid the rush, I would recommend getting to Kuang Si Falls as early as possible. Be there right at 8 a.m. when it opens. It's about a 45-minute drive out there on the motorbike from Luang Prabang. So get up and get going. Don't wait to go see Kuang Si Falls. If this was at all helpful for you, go ahead and like and subscribe for more food and travel videos. And now that you've subscribed, hint hint, join me for a little excursion to Luang Prabang and Vang Vieng.